please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to each one of you of this webinar, which is being organized under Telecom Committee. And the mentor of this Telecom Committee is Mr. Sandeep Agarwal, also the mentor of the Telecom Committee, and he is also the Managing Director of Paramount Communications. The chairman of this Telecom Committee is Mr. Rajiv Gupta. He is also associated with the TCIL and very knowledgeable. So he is also with us today. And of course, our co-chairman, Mr. Alok Mukherjee. So he is also going to join with us today. And the name of the webinar is India's Digital Transformation to Drive Post-COVID Economy. This is the topic today. And we are really very grateful. Very knowledgeable panelists who has joined today is Mr. Ajit Pai, distinguished expert, Niti Aayog. I believe he has already joined. Mr. Arun Karna, MD and CEO, AT&T Global Network Services India Private Limited. We welcome Mr. Karna. Mr. Deepak Chanduka, Deputy Director General, Special Projects, Department of Telecommunications, Government of India. We welcome you, Mr. Deepak. And Mr. Amit Malik, Managing Director, Asia Pacific, Japan and China, Cisco Systems India Private Limited. So he's also going to share his views on this topic. And last but not the least, Mr. Alok Mukherjee would also be joining and then giving the concluding remarks. We also welcome Mr. Saurabh Sanyal, Secretary General. If he has joined, I have just sent him the agenda. So he should also be joining. He's the Secretary General of PSDCCI. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll not take much of time. We have with us today Professor N.K. Goyal also. And we also welcome Professor Goyal, a very knowledgeable man. Personally, I have learned a lot from him as far as the telecom industry is concerned. So we welcome you, Professor Goyal, in this webinar. And we will also request you during the discussions to also kindly share your views on this topic today. Ladies and gentlemen, as I have already said at the outset, webinar is the only tool nowadays as far as the business associations are concerned, which is being used as the media of interaction. And thanks to the telecom industry, without this innovation, this would not have been possible. And I have been repeatedly saying it. And Sandeep ji has said in the previous talk that this is a revolution. And because of this development, the smooth conduct of the business associations are being organized in the form of webinars, etc. Without this, we do not have any tool as on date, as far as the chambers and industries are concerned, to have a meaningful interaction, not only with the central government, but with the state government. With this preamble, ladies and gentlemen, it is my proud privilege to invite Mr. Sandeep Agarwal, mentor of our Telecom Committee, PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So he is going to share his views on India's digital transformation to drive post-COVID economy. A very meaningful topic which we have today, and we welcome Mr. Sandeep Agarwal. Sir, over to you for your remarks. Thank you very much. Sir, if you can kindly unmute yourself, Sandeep ji.
So, Namaskar, such a distinguished gathering today of panelists, and I know that my knowledge will be the most limited. So, I first of all welcome Arun Karna ji, MD and CEO, AT&T Global Networks India Private Limited, Ajit Pai ji, the expert from Niti Aayog. Ajit ji has been so kind to help us and give his valuable comments to us consistently. Deepak Chanduka ji. Deepak ji is for the first time, I believe, with our chamber, and he is handling all the special projects of DOT Telecom. And so therefore, one of the most important persons, I would believe, who will be driving the government policy in the digital transformation currently undergoing by the government of India. Amit Malik ji, Managing Director, Asia Pacific, Japan and China, Cisco Systems. Amit ji is a dear friend. Thank you very much, Amit ji, that you have been able to spare time to discuss with us, and probably able to put your views on how this whole South Asia and East Asia is moving towards the digital transformation, where we are lacking and where we are speeding ahead of other countries. So Sanjay Agarwal ji, our president PhD CCI, Rajiv Gupta ji, our chairman telecom committee, and Mr. Alok Mukherjee, our co-chairman, Mr. Saurabh Sanyal, secretary general, Yogesh Srivastava ji, assistant secretary general PhD CCI. I am probably Professor N.K. Goyal ji from TEMA, and Professor Goyal has an immense amount of knowledge about the industry and the growth which we can do and we should do. So we will love to hear Goyal Saab's views. Sanjeev ji, Sanchit, Kritika, Arun Karna ji has switched off his video. I would believe, sir, I will like you to be online. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. So a warm welcome to everybody. So today's webinar on Indian digital transformation to drive post-COVID economy. Now, what the first thing which we have seen post-COVID is these webinars. Yes, even I bought the equipment for webinars probably 6 months before COVID struck. So maybe June 2019, we had software installed in my computer also, but usually we were not using it. The amount of discussion which happened online was limited. With the COVID, there was a sudden change, and with the kind of inputs given by the industry and the users, what we see is there is an immense improvement in the webinar experience. So therefore, people are actually able to, avoid meeting each other physically, because it seems that we are physically meeting in a webinar. So I believe that there has been a sudden change, sharp change in the quality of meetings online because of COVID. There has been many digital startups in India, pre-COVID also, but post-COVID, people have understood that what our respected Prime Minister has been always saying, that there was a time when the economies ran along the rivers, then they grew along the roads. But now the economies run and grow around optical fibers, which are the lifeblood of the digital economy. So when we say that 4G, 5G, 6G, all Gs are there, but they need the basic optical fiber. Now, why I'm saying that is because we make optical fibers. So, but anyway, so we basically, what I can say is that COVID has been a tipping point where digital economy requirement has been understood by the poorest, by the person who never thought, the ladies, the children, the girls. Nobody thought that, okay, boys, no, why do we need to study online? But there was this idea. What an idea, Sarji. And they started with this digital transformation of schools. Well, that was before time, but as soon as COVID struck, everybody transformed digitally. So the schools are now running efficiently with high quality education online. Billions of dollars of valuations have gone into digital companies who are providing education. So I personally believe that yes, services are the future, and services are going to make sure that require the digital transformation. They bring in the digital transformation, and they are, oh, sorry, too many phone calls coming. Sorry. So, well, anyways, so banking, insurance, claims, call centers, desktop publishing, audits, even inspections, even in manufacturing. When we say services, yes, but when we do uh, online inspections are being conducted. We are manufacturing cables. My customers are not coming to my plant. They have computers attached to our equipment. They have cameras and all that they are using to actually inspect our material online. So that is something which has totally changed the way the economy is moving. So in the manufacturing sector, I believe that Internet of Things is something which is already taking place. I really believe that these helicopters, these quadcopters for personal travel are not a very long distance away from being widely used in even our country. Maybe self-driving cars will have some more time, but these robotic things, and even probably, yes, I would believe that getting your operations online is maybe a thing of 5 years or 10 years in future, because of the lack of 100% reliable infrastructure which is we are having today. But maybe in the next 10 years, with the Niti Aayog pushing the government, and TCIL actually doing the hard work of putting in the equipment and the cables on the ground, I believe that we are going to reach a level when companies like Jio and Airtel invest heavily into the infrastructure, that probably in the next 5 years, we could be having the self-driving cars and remote operations. Well, I've tried talked too much. I believe my friends here are going to give their views. So I leave it to them to give me their expert views on this matter. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandeep ji. Thank you very much for your wonderful remarks. That was Mr. Sandeep Agarwal, mentor of our telecom committee. And Sandeep ji, before I request the panelists to speak, we have two more speakers to speak. But before that, I think you have set the tone for this today's talk. You have talked about school children are using internet because of this telecommunications development. You have also talked about banking, call centers, etc. Let me also put it on record that, of course, schools are really digitally transformed. But at the same time, I would love to ask the panelists later that how these students, those who are here for the last 15 months only on the internet classes they are attending, when they go physically, what kind of situations they will have and how they would be able to react, not only the students, but the teachers also. Because I have a teacher at home, my wife is a teacher, and I have a student also at home. So this is certainly going to be a very Herculean task when these people will go to the school. With this note now, ladies and gentlemen, let me request Mr. Rajiv Gupta, Chaircom Telecom Committee, to give his theme address. But Rajiv sir, let me also share it with you. Today on the radio, I was listening that in South Korea, there was a news that if you have a different brand of COVID vaccine, then your body will be able to have all sorts of connections and they will attract the Wi-Fi connection. I do not know whether it's a true or it's a false information. But Rajiv sir, since you are there in TCIL, and this I have learned on a radio called Radio Mirchi when I was coming to office. So is it true whether we have that kind of digital transformation or it is just a fake story? Over to you, Rajiv sir. Rajiv ji, are you there? Yes, please unmute yourself, sir. Yeah, all yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Yogesh. Mr. Arun, MD and CEO, AT&T Global. Mr. Ajit Pai, distinguished expert from Niti Aayog. Dear Deepak, Mr. Amit Malik, Managing Director, Asia Pacific Cisco. Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, and my dear friends, greeting to all. It's my privilege to welcome you all to this interactive webinar that we are organizing today on India's digital transformation to drive post-COVID economy. India's GDP growth has registered a historic low with the steepest quarterly contraction, possibly the worst among the G20 nations. Sectors like manufacturing, automobiles, tourism and hospitality, aviation, construction and real estate have all been adversely impacted by the ongoing pandemic. In fact, it's very difficult to conclude whether the economic impact of the pandemic has actually caused a structural problem in a particular sector or has simply underlined and highlighted it. MSMEs have also suffered a huge setback due to the economic meltdown, literally. While some countries may have fiscal buffers to absorb the shock created by pandemic, the idea of society as usual seems like a distant memory. India doesn't enjoy the privilege of having fiscal buffer, and as a nation, we have to strive to confront the challenges and capitalize the economies that will come our way. This demands an alteration in the development model, and new strategies need to be adopted, giving more emphasis to indigenous R&D and production. Atmanirbhar scheme launched by Government of India is a very good initiative and is yielding the results. However, in the post-pandemic era, the services sector and digital industry are expected to remain strong anchors for economic growth. Digitalization has started bridging the divide between India's formal and informal economies because all of them are using now digital means. Even as the world continues to grapple with the COVID-19 pandemic, the remarkable resilience of India's digital industry has been on display. Through the development innovative digital and technological solutions, India has successfully found solutions to the massive challenges which have been posed in the areas such as healthcare, education, financial inclusion, modernization of agriculture, and others. Coronavirus has propelled the use of contactless digital technology across India. It is not only technological advancement, but more importantly, it is the foundation of a new mechanism for the deliverance of goods and the citizen services by Government of India. Indian states have also increased the use of robots and drones, as already mentioned by Mr. Sandeep Agarwal in his address. Technology and digital tools are having an impact across all spheres of life, be it livelihood, access to services, or education. Now we have unique opportunity to use these emerging technologies to leapfrog into a new era of remote or extended health line. By leveraging the Internet of Things, wearables, and artificial intelligence, patient data can be analyzed and interpreted remotely in real time, ensuring improved outcomes. We also need to transfer the state of education in the country with technology. Concerted and collaborative action between government, education institution, and private sector is critical for bridging this last mile gap in connectivity. Public-private partnership to set up education hubs in every Gram Panchayat can really ensure equal access to quality education, which is so important in this new era. Digital technology has begun to change the drivers of structural transformation and economic growth. Services are now growing much faster than the manufacturing sector. Growth convergence between India and the developed world is now much faster in the services sector compared to the manufacturing sector. It took pandemic to bring home the power of digital technology and the possibility it has opened up for individual, organization, and the world at large. We need to harness these new technologies for facilitating us to capture the new opportunities in India as well as abroad. As we continue to fight this pandemic, rapid digitalization is going to drive economic recovery and help address systematic shortcomings to ensure universal access to fundamental development indicator. Thank you, Dr. Yogesh. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much for your setting the theme for today's discussions. And as you have said that the digital transformation is really impacted all across life. And ladies and gentlemen, we all know that whatever internet connections we are getting and whatever the little knowledge I have personally, the entire cables are being laid down under the sea. So I think one of genius said, if you really want to have gold, then you really need to dig deeply. So I think, is it really true? If we really want some more digital transformation, then we have to go under the sea and lay cables. So with this note, I would welcome Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, our president of PhD Chamber, who is also the chairman of Paramount Communications, who have put, I would say, thousands of kilometers of cables under the sea. So he would be able to, guide us how the digital transformation has actually helped and how PhD CCI and especially the Paramount Communications have really helped India for a digital transformation. Over to you, President. Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, President, PhD CCI.
You have been very kind, but let me just correct you. I can't claim thousands of kilometers have been laid by us under the sea, although we have had our part in the laying of undersea cables or repairing of undersea cables on Indian telecom users or the Indian government. So coming to the subject, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this interactive webinar that we are organizing today on the Indian digital transformation to drive the post-COVID economy. On behalf of the PhD Chamber, I would like to welcome our distinguished guests gracing the occasion today to interact with us. Sri Ajit Pai, the distinguished expert from NITI Aayog, Sri Deepak Chandukaji, the Deputy Director General Special Projects from Department of Telecom, Government of India, Sri Arun Karna, the MD and CEO of AT&T India, Sri Amit Malik, the Managing Director of Cisco Systems India, the Telecom Committee, Mr. Sandeep Agarwal, Sri Rajiv Gupta, the Chairman of Telecom Committee, Sri Alok Mukherjee, the Co-Chair of the Telecom Committee, Sri N.K. Goel, Chairman Emeritus of the TEMA Telecom Equipment Makers Association, and many other hat CBS, Sri Saurabh Sanyal, and of course our ASD, Dr. Yogesh Srivastava, who is driving the whole proceedings today. Before I express my views further, I would like to share with you a small brief about the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Friends, the PhD Chamber has been working as a catalyst for the promotion of the Indian industry, trade, and entrepreneurship for the past 116 years. We are a forward-looking, proactive, and dynamic pan-India apex organization representing more than 150,000 enterprises, mostly MSMEs. Progress with industry and government. The PhD Chamber, with a special focus on MSMEs, works at grassroots level with strong national and international linkages for propelling progress, harmony, and integrated development of the Indian economy. Reset of the Indian economy has seeped into every aspect of life. Even as the COVID-19 pandemic exacts a bitter toll on the economy, it is catalyzing the digital transformation across business models, channels, touch points, society. I think every way possible that we are living our lives. The process of digital transformation, however, of course, complex and long drawn out for businesses. Having said that it is complex and long drawn out, let me just tell you that when I was young and I had just entered business and I started my career with basically selling my telecom cables to the then Department of Telecoms. That was before Bharat Sanchar Nigam was formed. I used to wonder, along with the colleagues and friends, as to where will India reach when we have telecom penetration of 1 or 2 per 100 compared to more than 100 in the Western nations, and even China seemed to be doing better than us. This situation did not improve substantially for quite some time, I must say. And then we had this first transformation happening to us when India started uh, establishing digital electronic exchanges across the country. And at the same time, a large network of jelly-filled cables and coax cables to connect the trunk networks was done. And then you had a proliferation of PCOs, so-called PCOs, public call offices, those that were dotting the small towns and the highways. And that was the first transformation. That before that, telecom used to be a rarity, something that was available only to the very select few. And then it became democratized to quite an extent. And then the second step happened towards the end of 90s when the mobile networks started proliferating, and very soon we had the common man being able to afford those mobile phones, and with those the first real experience of telecom empowerment happened when we started understanding that what telecom can do, and when the farmers in the villages were able to get the latest prices from the mandi on their SMS or something. And that is how telecom really started empowering, and we as a nation also felt the real advantage of what telecom is all about and what telecom is going to mean. And thereafter, for 20 years, we had a breakneck growth in telecom. Telecom transformed our lives in many, many different ways. And yet, we lost digital penetration and telecom penetration levels comparing to anybody else in the world. Our telecom costs became cheapest in the world, and we were doing very well. But still, as it now transpires, as it now we have realized after COVID. So I think the times one can very easily now define as BC is before COVID and AC is after COVID. So, so BC period, nobody really knew that what all telecom can really do, despite having that much high telecom penetration. It was used for convenience, but that was about it. But after COVID, or even during COVID, even the very first, second months of COVID, people started learning to adapt these systems that they had become accustomed to, and the systems that they had been using now for so many years, into effective tools for actually getting the work done, getting the job done, and getting along with the business of their lives, which would otherwise not have been possible. So this transformation that has happened. So one says that digital transformation is complex. I just myself said that digital transformation is a complex and long drawn out process. But you look at the way things have happened. In India, this is the third transformation, and this is, of course, the biggest transformation. But each of the transformations happened comparatively very fast. And this transformation that has happened is actually the fastest. If you look at it, in a span of a few months, everybody's mindset changed. Whether it was the man on the street, the small businessman, whether it was student, whether it was the government, whether it was anybody, everybody tailored their expectations and processes according to what was the prevailing situation and what were the tools available to tackle that prevailing situation. And I think we have come out with flying colors. We are second to none internationally in the amount of innovation and adaptation that we have done. I must say, despite having all these telecom facilities and even the social media, which had become extremely popular, BC period also, many years in BC before COVID, but still, the way that we have adapted ourselves to use social media, the sudden explosive growth in EdTech. I attended a seminar in EdTech, and they use very exotic terms like K-12, I believe, which now I'm told means kindergarten to 12th through education technology. So, these things have come up so fast. EdTech, MedTech now. Earlier, you would need to always visit your doctor for the slightest medical issue. And there, even a telephonic consultation, there was no procedure, because even if the doctor could really give you sound advice on telephone, the problem was the doctor also did not have any charging model. So the doctor was not interested in you approaching him or her on the telephone. And the way this adaptation happened so fast, those digital payment platforms came up, those websites came up in which there was payment models for the doctors. So I think more than 90% of the doctor where physical consultation need will now be away even in post-COVID times, because people will not feel the need to take the trouble of physically going to the doctor's office and the doctor to have his clinic clogged with patients physically, and just to have them, this sort of revolution that has happened in everybody has changed their processes, whether it's hospitals, whether it's schools. All schools are doing online. Of course, one understands that there is a limit to online, there is a limit to telecom interactions. But at the same time, when there is nothing available, this is of course the best. And I would say even post-COVID, a lot of these things which we had earlier taken for granted being physical will now convert to virtual or on the telecom networks. Banking is another example. Most of the banking used to happen physically. Now, most of it has converted to virtual. Now, even the government, earlier, we have a large part of our business with government departments and PSUs. Earlier, it used to be mostly physical paper type letters being exchanged. And slowly, but especially with the onset of COVID, it has totally changed to a scenario where even the most conservative of government departments are happy to exchange emails and consider them as a sufficient proof of interaction and a sufficient proof of record. And the sort of certifications that are available on government websites, that is again amazing. That has taken away, obviated the need for people to stand in long lines and visit from one desk to the other to get a certificate or a government procedure done. So I think what we really have done, we have achieved as a nation, and even as humanity, one must admit. But I think even as humanity, if we look at it, as Indians, we have not lagged behind the world. One advantage being that probably we are much faster in adapting our processes and systems compared to the West, where they struggle with their legacy networks or legacy systems much longer. We tend to overcome the legacy issues much faster. So consider the CoWIN platform that we have built. Consider the Aadhaar platform that we have built. Consider the GST platform that we have built. These are all world-beating systems and platforms. So I think, considering all this, there is a huge scope for India to not only solve its own problems and issues and to do well, but also to be the leader in the world for adapting to the current needs to the digital world across the world, and especially for the third world, especially for the those countries which cannot afford very expensive technologies. So I really hope that in today's discussion, where we have such a galaxy of experts and people who can really, throw some light on the issues that confront us, we'll have some very interesting discussions, and hopefully we'll have some very positive suggestions to make to the authorities in this regard. Thank you so much, and my best wishes for the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much for your wonderful remarks. And you have rightly said that the digital transformation from PCO to doctors who are now seeing visually, has really transformed not only our cities of the country, but also the villages of our country. I think the recent example is, if I can say, that Twitter managing director has also been told that you have to come through digitally at the Ghaziabad police station. So I think it is only because of the digital transformation, and of course due to COVID, because otherwise going to a police station, and that too in Ghaziabad, and an executive like a senior technocrat, I mean, I can understand, being a son of a senior police officer, son-in-law, I should say, I know that what kind of transformation one really feels in a police station. Ladies and gentlemen, as our president has already set the tone of the discussions today, we are very happy today that we have a galaxy of speakers today: Mr. Ajit Pai, Mr. Arun Karna, Mr. Deepak Chanduka, and Mr. Amit Malik. And before I request Mr. Ajit Pai, distinguished
Dr. Yogesh, I would just like to add one thing. I should have mentioned it. The one biggest change in government processes is that today one can interact with the highest officials of the land on Zoom or on various platforms, and sort out a number of issues for which earlier it would have taken days and months maybe to get an appointment. and the officials are more than happy to take those decisions and be able to transmit their decisions again digitally, which means immediate transmission of the requirement of the public. So I think that's a huge thing which has happened, which earlier could not have been envisioned. This BC era, this after the COVID era has changed all that, and the senior most officials are willing to take decisions on the basis of their media, on the basis of these interactions on Zoom and so on, and then have them digitally conveyed also. Sorry, please. Sorry to interrupt you. Have interrupted.
No, absolutely, President. I think you are absolutely perfect. I'll give you a very recent example. In 3 to 4 days back, there was a report in Times of India in Delhi, in a place like Mandakini Enclave, where 8 trees have been cut by some NCD, contractors, and the Forest Department has taken all these people on task, and especially some of the residents also digitally. And sir, they have given not only the discussions, but the decision have also been given by these forest officers, not only to plant 250 trees, but also 2 lakh rupees per resident through digitally. So there is no point now going to them in the court of law and then pleading. Once they have given the order, the Zoom link is off. So, and it is final, and you cannot challenge that kind of decision by a forest officer, which is there on the Karni range, even in the Supreme Court of Law. So I think through digitally, it is fastest, it is speedy, but it is, yes, on the point. So ladies and gentlemen, with this note now, before I request Mr. Ajit Pai, distinguished expert, Niti Aayog, can I also give a very brief profile of Mr. Ajit Pai, who is a distinguished expert, Niti Aayog, where he heads economic and finance and oversees public disinvestment. He is also consultant to the vice chairperson of Niti Aayog, is the nodal officer of the Ministry of Finance, its subsidiary departments, and the Department of Public Enterprises, and handles matters related to the World Bank, IFC, ADB, NDB, OECD, and the G20. Mr. Pai is also chairman of Delhi Urban Art Commission, that is called DUAC, a statutory body created by an Act of Parliament in 1973 to advise the Government of India in the matter of preserving, developing, and maintaining the aesthetic quality of urban and environmental design. Mr. Pai holds a BR from the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, and MArch from the Yale School of Architecture, and MBA from the Yale School of Management. He attended Yale University as Tata Scholar and also served as a John M. Olin Fellow for Research in Markets and Regulatory Behavior. Over to you, Mr. Pai, all yours. And we would be very happy to have you once again in this telecom seminar. And he's going to talk how India's digital transformation to drive post-COVID economy. A big round of applause for Mr. Ajit Pai. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Srivastava, for that introduction. And good morning to my hosts from the PhD Chamber of Commerce, fellow panelists, and to ladies and gentlemen that are joining with us on this webinar. I would first like to begin by saying that both I and Niti Aayog, and I speak here in my personal capacity, share the enthusiasm that the other speakers before me have voiced, both about the potential for digital as well as the potential for India to actually emerge on the world platform. So one, digital in India as well as that. But what I would encourage on this webinar and all the fellow panelists to look at is not what is going right so far, because we know that, and it's been elucidated by both the Mr. Agarwals, both Mr. Sandeep Agarwal, Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, also by Mr. Gupta. But what is not going right and what we can change to make sure that India's potential and is achieved much faster. So I think when we had one of the first things that changed for India and put India onto the world map in terms of its economy after a very, very long time, it was the dot-com crash of the 2001, where the price of telecom globally fell by 95 to 99% in a very short period of time. That enabled a wonderful transformation in India because our software companies that were otherwise based over here, our business processing companies, all of these companies that are household names and form now a huge part of the Indian economy, whether it's the TCSs, the Infosys, the Wipros of the world, they would not have existed if that crash hadn't happened. and there hadn't been global overcapitalization. Now that transformation happened in 2001, about 20 years ago, drove a lot of change, accelerated many things in the Indian economy, like some of the other transformations, like even the cost of mobility falling with the cost of mobile telecom also falling, like optical data. Now these transformations happened 20 years ago in India to accelerate things, but gradually, if you have a look at the Indian economy, even today, if we have a look at the economy, things in India, the per capita GDP in India is still only about $2,000, and it is still under 20% of the world average. Just in terms of comparison, if you have a look at where China and India were back in 1963, both China and India were both around 20%. In fact, India was 21% of the average of world per capita GDP, and China was about 18%. By 1993, when we started opening up our economy, and I think the PhD chamber had a good role to play in that as well, in the early 90s when we opened it up, then at that point of time, China was about 7% of the world average and India was 6%. So we had been falling behind, even though we had been growing relative to the rest of the world, we had been falling behind from being 18% and 21% to being 7% and 6%. So we were already behind China in 93. Today, China is the world average and we are only 20% of the world average. So the reason why I mention these statistics is that while we have improved a lot, we have tripled. So we have grown much faster than the world since 1993. We've had many transformations, both in 2000, both the mobile transformation and subsequently, and we continue to grow and our prospects are faster than the world. Just growing faster than the world is not enough. It'll take 100 years if we just grow at the current pace faster than the world to catch up with where the world leaders are, maybe longer. We don't have that much time. And one of the tools that we have and we have to be dependent on is what levels the playing field with the rest of the world. And that leveling of the leveling of the knowledge playing field, the data playing field, all of those, the key enabler is telecom. So in our view, I think that we have to figure out how to use tools that now are available to us in this country, as has rightly been said by prior speakers. They sound optimistic about it, but there's an urgency to the pace. And all your suggestions on how we can accelerate the pace of the change in this one particular area, I would encourage all of the panelists to discuss that. I think we have talked about some of the things that are actually going to enable this change. Early part of infrastructure rollout happens with the government investing, with the private sector investing. Finally, when you reach a certain critical mass, there is the enabling of applications. This enabling of applications should be given critical mass. Once it attains critical mass, it starts feeding further investment in that infrastructure to start improving it, to increase the reliability, increase the universality. And once that happens, you have additional applications, additional adoption, and much greater penetration, not just of access, but dexterity in using this. Today, you'll be happy to know that during COVID, there was one or two transformations that happened. I think two of them have already been pointed out. We talked about things changing from a governance perspective, so much greater access digitally to services that earlier were not, whether it's the income tax or whether it's many other areas. There's been huge digital transformation over there. Of course, there are teething problems, but we need to sort them out. So we need to figure out what they are so people are not against digital. The second one that has been mentioned is the financial transformation, which has been massive at a time when there's been no mobility. But one of the things that I think I can mention very safely is that the JAM Trinity, the Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, and mobile, all three together have enabled a country even as poor as India to leapfrog many parts of the world in providing that access and trying to use that platform. However, we also want to note that while we have provided that JAM Trinity to the entire country, the dexterity of use, not everybody is proficient still in being able to use that platform. And our goal should be to make the usability as universal as the access now to the JAM Trinity. So as has rightly been said also, there are other sectors that are now going to be instrumental in driving growth post-COVID. Let me mention only two of them and then talk about some of the risks to those two. The first is the traditional view of people when they look at e-commerce around the world. They look at that as a big driver of digital. And in India itself, when you look at the retail industry, it's been a laggard for a very, very long time. Yes, we have our unicorns and massive unicorns, but in 2018, when you looked at the whole retail economy, you would see that what they call traditional retail was 88% of the overall retail economy. Modern retail, which is the large stores and formalized stores like the Reliance Fresh, like your Big Bazaar, like your Nature's Basket, and most of your other big retail chains were about 10%, and internet commerce was only 2%. At that point of time, internet commerce was growing, at 100% year over year. Lots of money getting invested, many startups. So very clearly in 2019, the change was continuing, the share towards, the e-commerce, and maybe a little bit towards modern retail. But it's become very clear as we move into 2021 and as we have gone through COVID, that the post-COVID world is very different, where e-commerce has actually become critical and become an enabler to many people that were reluctant. And as these drivers increase, we would have seen the impact also on the media industry, where the process of creative destruction is taking place over there, when the physical media is getting replaced increasingly by digital media, and the whole world of advertising is changing as well, where people spend their money as the platforms to acquire the products becomes more digital. Then also, so these massive transformations are happening that are actually feeding off the digital infrastructure, whether the mobile or the physical infrastructure, and should become drivers of revenue and further investment in ensuring that our network becomes more reliable, becomes more available. All of us, we talk about these video conferences, but we all know, even now, the number of glitches that people are having when they are on these video conferences, the quality of connectivity. This particular call is much better in terms of connectivity than a year ago when people are on these calls. So some of those glitches are getting sorted out. But in previous sessions like this, we have seen that it's still not reliable. And even today, in a day of maybe 5 or 10 video conferences, I would say that about half, many people don't have the desired quality. So there's still a lot of infrastructure upgrade, to be involved. The second, and I think that the retail would continue to gather momentum and feed, and that's an area which is one application that will continue. The education application has been also touched upon. I think that is also one that will continue. But the most critical one that I'm referring to right now in the digital transformation and what's going to drive the post-COVID globally, the Indian economy, is what I would call the financial transformation. And that financial transformation is one where a large part of the reason why India's growth was so restricted was that a big part of the Indian economy was informal. So the formal economy, just 3% of India used to file tax returns. Only 2% used to basically pay taxes. We're talking about 5 years ago. Today, those numbers are more than double that. So there has been a transformation of formalization. There has been a whole track record that's been created. And with GST, which could not have been enabled without the presence of the digital network that was created for it, the GSTN, would not have been possible. We now have massive formalization happening of the overall network. Now, I don't speak of that formalization just for government revenues. It's not a formalization that the government has been focused on only for tax revenue or pakad lo jo nahi kar rahe. The bigger aspect was that if you look at our Indian credit architecture, if you look at one of the biggest drivers, today global debt, the overall global debt to GDP is at 370%. And India is 1/3 that. And India's government debt is one of the highest because everyone says government se spend karao. But our private credit is right now only in the vicinity, higher than 50%, but in that vicinity. It is very low. Why is it that low? Because to borrow money from formal institutions, you need a track record, you need something to track, you need financial statements. If the economy stays informal, there's financial statements are not there, you will not get money from a bank or an NBFC. You'll only get money from the people that are willing to lend to those people at 24%, 36%, not at a good cost of capital. What is happening with this digital transformation as companies formalize, and the government has done its role, the private sector has done its role, is that you suddenly have a digital track record. You're tracing companies, you're formalizing companies. You have a track record of cash flows, which is going to allow banks, NBFCs, bond markets, etc., to start lending more into the economy. And this lending more into the economy starts boosting the economy immediately. The flow of credit over the past 5 to 7 years had slowed down in the economy, but we are going to start seeing that begin to reaccelerate on the back of this formalization. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the most massive transformations that this economy is going to go through, because our private credit is one of the lowest in the G20. It is one of the lowest in the G20. It can climb. And as we have more and more reliable track records coming because of the GSTN, because of greater formalization, because of greater tax returns, you suddenly have the basis on which this credit is going to enter the economy and start making it grow. Things were already beginning to improve before COVID interrupted them. And COVID has interrupted that wonderful track record that otherwise the Experians, Equifaxes, TransUnions of the world, the Civils of the world were creating. You need about a 3-year track record before you have reliability of credit scores. That's been interrupted by COVID. But again, despite this reset, because of our digital infrastructure, that track record is going to get set very quickly. And gradually, as we start reinflating and re-providing credit into the Indian economy, I think we have many, many years of double-digit growth that is going to be enabled. Now, there are 2 or 3 things that I said are risks that we must watch out for. One of the risks has been pointed out by one of the key players in the telecom industry. In the mobile industry, we have gone from having more than 12 players to now having, what he called 2.5 players, not my words. And he said it will be a huge risk to have only 2 significant national players at scale, of economy in the Indian economy. So we've got to figure out ways and means to ensure that the industry stays competitive. I'm not saying we need to get to 12 players, but stays healthy, competitive, so that it can continue to invest and continue to grow. And the similar thing that we came up with a terrestrial infrastructure to ensure that the last person gets access to very high speed access so that it can be universal. There's the BharatNet project. And that project, despite best efforts from everyone, including people on this call, has gone much slower than initially anticipated. So we've got to figure out what the issues over there are. We've got to discuss it. Don't avoid things that are not working. Please suggest what can be done, not just in terms of finishing the rollout of that network, but also suggest all the end market applications, what can transform it, what are the various steps that can be taken to get the private sector involved, because without the involvement of the private sector in ensuring that this network goes, the government debt has risen right now in the past 1.5 years from 69% to 90% of GDP. That increases the cost of capital of the country. So while we want the government to continue to invest in infrastructure, because very high elasticity of jobs, 5 times that of the average economy, we also need the private sector involved in the last mile to drive the applications of this, to drive the use of this, to ensure that the infrastructure the government is putting in place is going to be used much more productively. So we want the industry to focus on this, to evangelize it, to make sure that not just rollout, but also the usage is optimized. I'll stop there with this to share that we share all the enthusiasm of the PhD Commerce, Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and we would love to hear everything over here about how we're going to make things better and how strong we are. But we also want to hear what we can all do, including the PhD Chambers members, to change and make sure that things happen faster. The Indian economy needs all its help to catch up with where the rest of the world is. We are still behind, and we need to play that catch up. With that, I will end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ajit. Thank you very much. And it was a wonderful talk from your end. As you have rightly said, PhD is an interactive platform, and we have 4 more speakers. So I would see that if we have time, if the time permit, then we can also take some of the questions at the end of all our distinguished speakers speak. Thank you very much, Mr. Pai. And now we have Mr. Arun Karna, MD and CEO, AT&T Global Network Services India Private Limited. And please allow me to have a brief profile of Mr. Arun Karna. Is a highly experienced technology business leader with more than 30 years of experience in the telecoms and IT industry. He has been with AT&T for more than 20 years and is currently the managing director and CEO of AT&T Global Network Services India Private Limited. His responsibilities include overseeing AT&T businesses, operations, and customers' engagement throughout the country. And during his tenure, Mr. Arun has achieved a phenomenal growth in the AT&T customer base in India, which has led to a tremendous growth in revenues. And ladies and gentlemen, let me also share it with you. He holds a PGDBM, specializing in marketing and finance from IMT Ghaziabad, and BE Electronics and Telecom from Pune University. Over to you, Mr. Arun. All yours, sir. And post that, we will go to Mr. Deepak Chanduka, Mr. Amit Malik, and then, of course, our own Professor N.K. Goyal. And then we will have some interactive session, maybe question and answer. Over to you, Mr. Arun.
Thank you, Dr. Yogesh, and thank you for such a warm introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I feel extremely honored to be speaking to you from this platform today. Also feel extremely humbled to be sharing the stage with such eminent leaders from their respective fields. And many thanks to the PhD CCI leadership to invite me. And really, it's a very tough act to follow at the back of such powerful speakers that have gone before me, because there's so much ground that they've already covered that I'm left scratching my head as to what new or different should I be saying here on this platform. But let me try. So my plan is to talk about three aspects of digital transformation in the post-COVID world. See, I come from the enterprise space, so what I would like to share with you is what are the prominent digital transformation trends that we are seeing in the market and which would likely accelerate even further in the post-COVID world. Second is the aspect of network security, especially in the context of digital transformation, because cyber security, network security concerns are high, the threat perceptions are high, and this could actually hobble our march of digital transformation. So this is something that we need to watch out for, and I'd like to touch upon it a little bit. And thirdly, I would like to talk about the leadership aspect of digital culture. So what I would like to submit is that digital transformation is not just about technology. It's as much as about people and culture as well. So that's one aspect that maybe we could discuss very quickly on this August platform. But let me begin by walking you through some of the digital transformation trends that we are seeing in the enterprise space, that is our customer space. And I have to say that these trends already existed even prior to COVID. But what COVID has done is to accelerate these trends manifold. And you would realize when we talk of these, and some speakers have already alluded to it, is all these trends are not in isolation. They are all interlinked and sort of dependent on each other for acceleration. So what we've seen over the last 12 to 15 months, ever since the pandemic hit us, we saw that the adoption of digital transformation really increased significantly. And some of the earlier speakers have rightly pointed in which areas these trends were more prominent. But what clearly emerged from the discussion was that those organizations or enterprises which had not still embarked on their digital journey or were very early on in their digital journey, they faced a tough time during the pandemic. Whereas enterprises or organizations who were fairly way down in their digital journey, they had not only survived but thrived. So it sort of gave them a multiplier effect. They sort of increased the distance between themselves and the competition. And the examples are right there. They were cited by other leaders as well on this call. So look at online commerce and marketplaces. Look at Amazon, Flipkart, Big Basket, online groceries, delivery-based services, anything that require delivery at doorstep, and all those businesses which could actually leverage digital tech. We talked about fintech, which enabled payment gateways and payment applications, enabling online payments anytime, anywhere. Health tech, connecting patients to doctors in pandemic times virtually, and edutech, which actually made sure that our education system didn't grind to a halt, that classes continued, albeit virtually. And I know that students and teachers can't wait to go back to pre-COVID times, but I think for some time to come, this would be still a very hybrid model, and thanks to digital technology, that has been made possible. So, fair to say that the dependency on digital technologies has increased significantly across the world, including India. And we have started to see the blurring of boundaries between physical and digital, and hence the new term called phygital has come about. And, that and the pace of change, the change of velocity which this has brought about, is only bound to increase. Some of the prominent areas that we have seen this come into effect, and I'll quickly talk about these. And again, like I said, these are interrelated disciplines or buckets. None of them work in isolation. So first, trend is, of course, the move to the cloud adaptation. So for the businesses to move in, even their very critical enterprise applications to the cloud sort of became a must, and that actually was happening even before COVID. But what COVID did was to force an acceleration in that direction. So we've seen, AWS, Microsoft, Google, they've seen their business grow more than 30% in their cloud business last year, and that trend is likely to continue. Second is the mobility piece. So suddenly the overnight move to work from home, or actually work from anywhere, which was necessitated by COVID, the amount of mobile end devices that locked down to the network, phenomenal. And of course, then, to the point that other leaders made, that we need to make sure that the networks are up to it in terms of capacities, in terms of latencies, in terms of performance, in terms of reliability. Third is the move to software. So there has been the cliche that software is eating the world, but that has never been truer than in these times. Even a very traditional, so-called traditional business like telecom, which for long was very hardware centric, has suddenly made the pivot to this software-defined networking, software-defined wide area networks, network function virtualization. So even network functions are being turned into software pieces, and their control, the orchestration and control being done through software controllers. And now you have software defined data centers, you have software defined security, and not just telecoms or technology. Even in the consumer and industrial products now, you find there's a lot more software which is being fused into those products or services. Take for example the connected car. So I'm not talking yet autonomous cars, but we have connected cars on the road in India. And those cars are actually nothing but computers on wheels, I would submit, because of the kind of software that goes into the various systems in the connected car. The next trend is security, and we know that the threat landscape has changed significantly over the last 15 months. Unfortunately, the pandemic has also given rise to a lot of bad actor activity, and the reason for that is obvious, as we have seen more and more physical assets get connected to the internet, more and more enterprise applications moving to the public cloud, and people working from home. The threat surface itself has widened. So it's giving a larger target to the bad actors to attack. And it was natural that there would be a significant uptick in the amount of ransomware attacks, DDoS attacks, phishing attacks, and that's happened. And we are all fighting it as an industry. And therefore, organizations have to have a very holistic strategy when it comes to security. So whether it is, there has to be endpoint security, there has to be network security, there has to be data and application security. And I would submit that all these buckets of security have to be overlaid by a layer or like a blanket of threat intelligence, which uses AI and ML technology to actually predict security threats that might be emerging. The next trend is IoT. Again, we have seen IoT adoption pick up significantly in those areas which required efficiency improvement and cost reduction, but also now to ensure business continuity. It has become very important in that aspect. And so you would see a lot more manufacturers are now, you know, going for Industry 4.0, being able to monitor their industrial assets within their shop floor remotely, ability to remotely monitor their products, which are valuable assets out in the field. Then there are use cases now for monitoring employee health and safety, leveraging video analytics, for example, to fulfill the in-building or in-premise, on-premise uh, COVID protocols. So, for example, adherence to social distancing, using smart badges, etc., and also measuring the vitals of the incoming employees, for example, in a factory, to make sure that no one is at risk. And also, for example, with supply chains being badly disrupted, we have seen a lot more digitalization of supply chains from various industries. So, be it e-commerce or manufacturing, and there are use cases now plenty for asset tracking, fleet management, inventory optimization, warehouse optimization. All those have been picking up. And for example, in healthcare, the use of IoT enabled smart wearables to monitor patient vitals or even to track assets within hospitals. So, we actually worked on a use case where a hospital is using robots for germ zapping. So those robots go around sanitizing the hospital, killing the pathogens in the hospitals, and it is being done robotically. And those robots are IoT enabled. Then, of course, all said and done, this is now becoming, excuse me, a data powered economy. Now, for long, people have been saying data is the new oil, which is true, but then oil needs to be refined as well, right? So just having a lot of raw data which doesn't yield actionable information and doesn't yield insights, that has to change. And here the use of analytics and AI is coming to the fore and has done so rapidly over the last 12 to 15 months. And this will increase more going forward, where you leverage the power of AI for taking decisions and to predict outcomes. So, for example, in manufacturing, for predictive maintenance of machines, in retail, using data analytics to stock products which are in high demand, and so managing the right level of inventory at the right place, and then leveraging AI to be able to offer personalized products to their end customers. Healthcare, we have already discussed. The move is toward predictive healthcare and personalized medicine. So, how do you sort of look at someone's history and predict what potential health challenges that individual might face in the future and sort of take action today? And last but not the least is this whole move towards virtual collaboration, which we are seeing now and we have seen for months. Zoom, WebEx, all kinds of unified communications tools have been brought to the fore to enable business continuity, to enable ongoing dialogue. So with that said, we talked a little bit about security, and I would touch upon network security in specific. And as we discussed that the threat perceptions have gone up, the threat surface have become much larger, and therefore a lot of bad actor activity. And with that's, and of course we saw the causes of that. A lot more enterprises are now digital. Their applications are up in the cloud. Their workforce are spread all over the place with mobile devices trying to enter into that network, so on and so forth. This is a great challenge for security teams of these organizations, because now they're struggling not only to control who and what device should have access to what application, but when, why, and for which purpose. So the thing here is that now enterprises are looking for a converged solution, network and security solutions converged. And we have been working very closely with some of our industry partners. Amit Malik is here, and there's a huge collaboration within the industry to sort of tackle that problem. And in this scenario, there is a new converged solution that is coming about, a new framework. Briefly touch upon that. It's called SASE, and I'm sure Amit would readily recognize that. It's called Secure Access Service Edge. Basically, it's a new framework which is emerging in the space of cybersecurity, network security. And it is a convergence of networking and security, and it's a single dialogue, single pane of glass, so to speak, which other than firewalls has three other major pillars, and I'll quickly touch upon those. First of all is zero trust network access. So this is a principle where it works on the principle of least privilege, and that all traffic on the network, whether whatever be the origin, has to be inspected and enables administrators to grant access to specific applications by the role of the user or by user, oftentimes without having to connect to the enterprise network itself. So you have to really establish your identity and why would you need access to a particular application. And unless you do that, there is no trust. Even if you are an outsider, even if you are within the network perimeter, you will not be allowed. Second is secure web gateway protection, which follows users virtually anywhere they are located to help provide information about what sites they visit are safe and appropriate for use. And the third is in this hybrid cloud environment, something cloud, especially in the multi-cloud environment, something called a cloud access security broker, which provides visibility into which SaaS or cloud-based application are being accessed by what user. So security controls may be applied appropriately and vulnerabilities can be analyzed appropriately as well. So those trends in various technologies, and especially with the focus on security, is what I wanted to speak about. But quickly turning upon people and culture and leadership. So like I said, digital transformation is, yes, it's a lot about technology, but equally it's about people and culture. And here is where leadership will play a huge role in influencing the digital culture of organizations, including adoption in our country as well. In fact, there was a recent survey which was conducted by MIT Cognizant, and it threw various interesting
Arunji, we
aspects.
have paucity of time. If you can kindly, yeah,
Sure,
we
sure,
have two
sure,
more
absolutely.
speakers. Yeah.
Sure. So I'll just quickly touch upon this interesting aspect of digital transformation. So we always talk about effective digital transformation. So KPIs are built about what would effective digital transformation in an organization look like. But now a new aspect has come into play, which is talking of effective with an A, digital transformation, which says you need to also take into account the softer aspects. You need to take into account the concerns and values and progression of the workforce itself, not just about superior business capabilities and outcomes. Because unless you do that, any digital transformation project or initiative within organizations or in the larger country is bound to fail. So you have to go for effective plus effective digital transformation. So I'll put that to rest here. Those were my thoughts for the afternoon. Thank you so much.
Great, Arunji. Yeah, great. Thank you very much. He has rightly said effective and effective digital transformation. And ladies and gentlemen, as I have said, we have three more speakers. So, and my colleague Kurtika is giving me WhatsApp messages that to ensure that everything happens and by 12:30, 35, because it's also a challenge for the audience to hold them for more than 1.5 hours in such kind of webinar through digitally. So, ladies and gentlemen, now we have a proud privilege to invite Mr. Deepak Chanduka, Deputy Director General, Special Projects, Department of Telecommunications. And let me just share a brief profile of Mr. Deepak. He is DDG Special Projects USOF. Ladies and gentlemen, somebody was just mentioning it is United States. No, my dear friend, it is not United States. It is basically Universal Services Obligation Fund, Department of Telecom. So he is the DDG of a special project. So Shri Deepak Chanduka is an ITS officer of 1987 batch, presently working as a DDG Special Projects USOF DOT. He holds degree in BTech Electronics and Communications and MBA Marketing. He has vast experience in matters related to material and contract management for BharatNet project and is presently handling BharatNet project implementation through Triple P model and USOF projects for provisioning of 4G based mobile coverage to uncovered remote and strategic areas of the country. And earlier he has worked in different profiles in MTNL and TCIL as general manager in the area of enterprise business, marketing, HR and IT and networking, implementing national and international projects in the field of fiber to the home, that is called FTTH, 4G broadband, data centers, value-added services, e-governance projects, national internet backbone, NIB power sector projects, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, DDG in Department of Telecom, let me tell you, Deepak ji, very honestly and very proudly, when in the year 1988, 88, 89, if I remember correctly, Mr. B.R. Nair used to be the Secretary Department of Telecom, and my father, who's an IES officer, DDG ERU, Enterprise Research Unit. And we used to learn about GB, about MB from Mr. Nair. And we used to say, Uncle, what is this MB called? What is this called GB? So, and he used to give such kind of quizzes to us in 1988, 87. And one of my cousin's sisters, she used to say, gigabyte, maybe a chocolate. So I think the story of transformation starts from gigabyte and megabyte. And then I realized it is not BITE, it is BYTE. So ladies and gentlemen, and a big story with Department of Telecommunication, and Deepak ji is the right person who would share the digital transformation of this from MBGB to at this stage when Arun ji was saying effective and effective global transformation. Over to you, Deepak ji, all yours, and then we will go to Mr. Amit Malik and then Professor Goel. Over to you, sir. Please unmute yourself and speak.
Thank you very much for the very large introduction of me. I didn't deserve that, first of all. So I'll start my brief. I mean, with this hello to respected chair, Mr. Agarwal, for inviting me, my co-panelists, Mr. Pai, Mr. Karna, and Mr. Malik, and other patient listeners of this panel. And other people who are attending the webinar on through web. So I would mention few things like as per the topic of today's discussion, like digital transformation and its impact on the economy in the post-COVID era. In my view, I feel the digital transformation has already happened. And the only worry we should have that the trend should continue and the thing should not stop further once people are fully vaccinated and they are free of all problems and all restrictions are over, because some of the speaker mentioned that once a lot of government works, Mr. Sanjay Agarwal mentioned that government works are happening online. We are able to do remote monitoring, remote meetings and all those discussions. And I'm afraid once everybody is sure that the COVID menace is over, so especially in government, people may be more tempted to call for the physical meetings once again. So the longer this problem remains, though it's a negative thought, I feel that the transformation would continue. So with those words, I come back to the topic. One point Mr. Sai mentioned in his discussion about the gross domestic product, which is very low in India as compared to China and other countries. So my view about that would be like gross domestic product, we always relate to digital transformation also. Like we always say, with 10% growth in broadband connectivity, there is a GDP growth by 1%. That is the formula that we float often in our presentations and lecture. So normally when we talk about such things, the idea is of the consumer, the component of GDP which is related to consumer, the consumption side, which is enhancing because of these kind of online shopping and these kind of patterns. But the GDP is also affected by the inventories and the government spending and other factors. So we really, those who are economists, they need to really look into these aspects, that once this digital transformation takes place and we calculate all 5 components of GDP, so maybe one component is being enhanced by the digital transformation, like consumer consumption by more online buying through Amazon and many platforms. But on the same time, the government consumption may decrease, or the inventory, which is also a factor that may also decrease. So overall, the GDP growth may not appear, and it goes on in different sectors actually. So considering that digital transformation and the base of it, which is the telecom connectivity and broadband connectivity, which is the essential part of it, this digital transformation is highly dependent on a robust connectivity. And in that direction, the effort that the Department of Telecom has taken up through USOF, of course, that we are trying to cover not only the urban population, but excuse me, just I'll take some water. Not only the urban population, but we are also connecting the entire country, the entire rural population through various projects in USOF into those areas which are non-lucrative for the normal operators, the private operators. In that directions, we have done some basic schemes like comprehensive development plans for the northeastern region, where the mobile connectivity of all villages is happening. Then comprehensive plans for the aspirational districts in the country, which are the most backward as per NITI Aayog assessment. There are 112 aspirational districts, out of which 64 are yet to be connected. For all the villages in those districts are yet to be connected. So we have launched some massive schemes for 9 states, where we are connecting more than 1,000 villages across these aspirational districts. Besides that, we are doing coverage of all the border district, border villages in the country, so that people in the borders are also not dependent on the foreign signal, because there's a lot of interception from China and Nepal side. So those projects are happening. And on top of it, we are also doing this BharatNet project, which started though in 2014, but even in 2021, much progress has not been achieved, at least except that 100,000 gram panchayats have been connected. But now the latest mandate as per PM's statement is to connect all more than 6.6 lakh villages across the country. And to achieve that objective, we have come up with the public-private participation model, so that the benefit of broadband connectivity is reached to all the country, and the overall development of mobile connectivity and broadband connectivity happens. So this is an important factor for the digital transformation, because now from economic perspective also, though lot of economy, I mean, dependent on the urban purchasing and other things, but now shift is happening towards the rural population. So unless the entire rural population is also connected on board, the fruit of digital transformation will not be long lasting. So in that direction, the steps of DoT are quite interesting. So besides that, we are also doing a lot of sectoral reforms for self-reliance of the country, like production linked incentive scheme has been launched with a budget of more than 12,000 crores, in which several registrations have happened. So that will encourage Indian manufacturers to come up with more and more production, because it's a production link incentives. So a lot of such incentives will also help the entire sector of digital transformation. Besides that, there are certain challenges also in the sector, like I mentioned, this fiber connectivity, though it has reached to all the gram panchayats, but that needs to be connected in the last mile also. That is a very basic challenge. When the consumers, they are able to apply and get the broadband connections, then only the real transformation will happen, and they will be able to achieve broadband connectivity. And lastly, I would also reply to that remark of the megabyte and petabyte and other things. So naturally, those days of megabyte, they are not discussed today. Now we are discussing petabytes and terabytes, and we mentioned how much of the data can travel. And somebody mentioned about the submarine connectivity also. So like we have Andaman Nicobar Islands and Lakshadweep. So already we have connected Andaman Nicobar Island on submarine cable through our partner BSNL. The project has been executed, and now Lakshadweep is under process with more than 1,000 crore investment. So this will also bring our islands on the digital map. So overall scenario will be that the entire country will be digitally transformed, and that will impact the overall GDP, not only in terms of the consumption from the consumers, but also in terms of government consumptions and the inventories and other factors of GDP, so that overall growth is achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deepak. Thank you very much, sir. You have rightly said from MB to GB, we have gone across. But let me also share it with you, a very nostalgic statement, which I personally used to learn during my college days. And when my father used to show me Sanchar Bhavan, and he used to tell me कि बेटा इसी भवन से जो transformation निकलेगी वो यहीं से निकलेगी, and we will have mobile. We used to laugh at him. Believe me, let me be very honest with you. And my mother, who is 10th pass, she used to say, "Arey, phone hoga bagair taar ke." So then he used to say, "Yes, you can't understand, but it is going to happen, and it is bound to happen," which has happened. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me share it with you. That is the Bhavan, Sanchar Bhavan, which basically shows the digital transformation. And of course, the private players has played a very important role. But the main Gangotri is Sanchar Bhavan. This is what my learning is, and I feel very proud that the people like Mr. Deepak and others, those who have worked very hard in Department of Telecommunications, are the real pioneers who have put across Ek Bharat, Shresth Bharat. And as Mr. Deepak has said, the connectivity in the rural areas, the rural men and women connected, then only our Prime Minister, who has said Shresth Bharat, will be realized in a proper and in a real way. Ladies and gentlemen, now we have come to another speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Deepak. Kindly stay with us, and we will have more some question and answer session. Mr. Amit Malik, Managing Director, Asia, Pacific, Japan and China, Cisco Systems India Private Limited. So he would be speaking. And ladies and gentlemen, it is my proud privilege to give a very brief profile of Mr. Amit Malik. Leads the global services provider segment for Cisco, Asia, Pacific, Japan and Greater China. He is responsible for driving sales and transformation through strategic initiatives and driving standardization across APJC to drive consistent and replicable sales behavior. Prior to his current role, Amit led several roles in Cisco, including managing the public sector and services business for Cisco in India and South Asia, responsible for the sale of Cisco products and services to the central and state government and defense in India. He also led various initiatives around smart cities besides leading Cisco services in India and South Asia. Mr. Amit has been acknowledged in India and South Asia for his efforts in driving the growth of information and communication technology, leading to business transformation, a key speaker at forums in inclusive growth, smart nations, and 5G. Amit ji is also very informative that he has been connected with the FICCI as the co-chair of Urban Infrastructure and Smart Cities, and he was also the co-chair of ICT of CII Eastern Region and the vice chairman of AmCham. So he understands the business of the Industry Association also. So, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome Mr. Amit Malik, and sir, the mic is yours. Over to you, Mr. Amit.
Thank you so much, Yogesh, and I think that was a fantastic introduction. And it is always nice to see Sandeep ji. Thank you, Sandeep ji, you and the entire PhD the Chambers team to have invited me. And really eminent panelist, thank you so much. Good to see Chanduka ji again. I've seen him after a very long time, so it's always a pleasure. Arun, it's always nice to see you. We keep meeting on these forums. And I think whatever Ajit Pai spoke was really, really interesting. In fact, and thank you, Rajiv ji, as well. I think what I did was, while I was hearing all this presentation, I kind of, I had a presentation ready. I just parked it aside. I said, let me not talk about that, but let me just kind of thread this together, what all everybody said and how do I bring this together with some of my views. And while I was doing that, and your exabytes, sorry, your megabytes and some of your nostalgic inputs, Yogesh ji, also took me down memory lane. And I was thinking about 5 to 6 years ago, I used to get on a panel or a podium and speaking to audiences. And I used to say, if I had a crystal ball and I look into it, the future is going to be digital, right? And I never realized that digital will happen so soon, you know, and digital would happen thanks to something which we didn't want, which was COVID, right? And as Sanjeev ji mentioned, AC and BC, I think life post-COVID has been significantly changed. And I think it's significantly digital, which is probably the best part. In fact, what we achieved in probably 8 to 10 weeks is something which we could not achieve in over a decade, which is also fantastic. What it has also done is, and I liked your comments about Sanchar Bhavan, and I think telecom is again right at the forefront of everything that we do. Right? Internet is today a lifeline. One can't live without it. And we saw that playing out during COVID days. You mentioned about all the education challenges, health, etc. And the forefront of that was all telecom. Right? Because without that connectivity, I don't think we would have been able to be as productive as we wanted to be. Nevertheless, I think just to take a different step here and talk about what's really changing, because I think the topic you want to talk about is from here onwards, what happens specifically for India. And I think Ajit Pai made some very interesting points, but let's look at what are the trends that we saw during COVID firstly. So we saw video conferencing, which you all mentioned, that went up almost 30 to 50 times. Anything and everything became video, right? We're speaking about e-com. Yes, it came off a very small number, right? Because e-com was just about 2 to 3%, but the growth on e-com has been anywhere between 30 to 50% and more, right? In certain cases, average growth globally is also, even in US, which was probably advanced, the e-com growth was close to 20%. Which was fantastic because it was typically growing at anywhere between 6 to 10%, right? But what also, while all this was growing, this was great. I love one of the points which Arun was talking about, which was the security bit. The security attacks grew 600%, right? So with every good, there comes a bad as well. Now, from here onwards, if we have to make our plans, where do we go from here? I think what COVID has taught us is 3 things. Firstly, whatever we build has to be resilient. It has to be flexible and it has to be secure. These 3 things are going to be the foundation of anything we decide to build, right? Now that is from a network or architecture topology perspective. But what is even more critical is how do we really move forward? Chanduka ji mentioned how we're going to be reaching out to villages with BharatNet, etc. There's a direct correlation between internet bandwidth availability and the rise in GDP. Now, is that sufficient? I can have whatever amount of bandwidth that is available, but if we do not utilize it well, we'll always have a challenge. And that brings me to the most critical point. And I think to some extent, Ajit alluded to that as well, where he talked about a knowledge economy. I think the most critical thing is innovation. Today, if we have to leapfrog in this post-COVID area, the most important thing is innovation. And we need to cultivate this thought process of innovation. Because honestly, what is Silicon Valley? Silicon Valley is not really a place. Silicon Valley is a mindset. We need to create that mindset. Look at smaller countries like Israel, because Sandeep ji wanted me to give some experiences of global and some of the other countries, and I would love to do that. Look at a small country like Israel and the number of patents that they have the kind of innovation economy that they've built. And look at the huge amount of capital that we have in terms of intellectuals, in terms of the fantastic education institutes that we have. We need to build all of it. But what is changing now is the pace of things has to be much faster. You know, the pace of innovation, pace of anything that we do has to be fast. Ideas itself are perishable. If we don't really latch on the idea and move fast, we will definitely fall behind. But if we have to move fast, we have to leapfrog, we have to compete with China, etc. We saw the numbers, right? What do? We need to ensure that anything that we do is fast. And to be fast, it has to be, I'll go back to the serial and parallel processing, right? The way we learn. So a lot of things that we do are serial. We will first do BharatNet, then we will so we will first do a next thing, then we will do this, and then we will do this. Unfortunately, today, that is a luxury. If we decide to do things serially, I think we will be left behind. There's multiple things that we need to do in parallel. And coming back to telecom now, what is that big lever going forward, which is going to transform? I think one of the big things there is the advent of 5G. And the way we are going to use 5G is also going to determine the way we are going to move in the next few years. Because honestly, 5G will become a platform for innovation. And why do I say that? What's so great about just adding one more G from 4G, 5G is something really changing significantly. Yes, what is changing today is that availability of the huge amount of bandwidth that you're going to get, the low latencies that you'll get. What will it fuel? It will fuel innovation because it becomes a platform for development. I'll give you an analogy, and that is what happened in the smart cities, since that's another area where I'm very passionate about. And when we were doing these smart city projects, people used to come and they used to look around and say, where is the city smart? You know, because when they assumed smart city, they assumed that the infrastructure would have changed significantly. And we used to take them to the command and control center and showed them how various things are being done, how applications are being born out of local entrepreneurs who are taking this as a step for innovation. And they used to be, wow. And honestly, that was probably one of the best in the world. I used to be very proud when I used to go to Barcelona and make these presentations at the at the Smart City Forum, right? And it was fantastic because people used to come to us to ask suggestions. How is India doing this? Now that was a real proud moment because typically we were used to going to these exhibitions and going to other stalls and says, how is Germany doing this? Or how is United States doing this? Here we saw the world coming to us and says, how is India doing this? We have yet another opportunity with 5G to do something similar. And more important, private 5G, right? Why do I say that? And I've been speaking to various folks in the government and my views are very clear. And this is what we are happening in countries in Asia Pac. What's really happening in Japan? Japan today is saying, guys, because we want to expedite the speed, they're subsidizing about 20 private 5G projects. They're saying, let's not limit it to public 5G. Let the enterprises decide for themselves how fast they want to move and build these environments of private 5G. So in my opinion, these two are going to be very significant drivers. The other big driver, and which is often said now in the post-COVID area, is while the initial talk was on digitization, is when should we digitize? How should we digitize? Now we say anything that can be digitized has to be digitized. And that is where automation comes in. And this is across anything that we do. Arun spoke about AI, ML, a lot of that stuff. Now, whether it is an enterprise, whether it is a telecom, whether it is a public sector, anything, automation will become the key, right? And you will see that happening. We're seeing that happening in service providers today. You know, in a lot of ways, there was a lot of legacy systems in what this, because the evolution happened right from 2G, so many Gs kept half a G got added, full G got added. And so many things happened, you know, it wasn't easy for them to migrate everything. And operational expenses were going up. And today they're realizing that automation is really, really critical for them to ensure not only that the cost becomes less, they are a lot more efficient, right? And resilient. The next big transition that I see, and that is more from a telecom world, is, and this is also going to be really, really massive. And it's going to be significantly cost saving. It will make things a lot more efficient, is the whole convergence of IP and optical. It is very similar to what happened a few decades ago when voice and video collapsed. You know, when voice and video were there, nobody assumed everybody had one cable for voice coming in, data and voice collapse. There was a data cable and there was a voice. You don't see that any longer because data and voice converged, and now video also came on top of that. But at that time, when we spoke about voice and data converging, it was absolutely unheard of and unthought of. People would not believe that any time we will see that convergence. No, data is separate, voice is separate, right? And similar situation is what we are seeing today in optical and IP. There is an entire IP network, there is an entire optical network. You're running networks over networks, right? Now, the future is where we'll see these networks collapsing. We will see everything end to end speaking one language, so that it becomes that much more easier for telecom service providers to manage that. Because the initial estimates by most analysts is the TCO comes down by 40%. Now, we haven't seen an innovation like this in at least the recent past, because of which we are seeing the cost of operation goes down by as much as 40%, which is very, very significant, right? And also eases the way the whole network works and can be automated and can be monitored. Because today the biggest challenge is monitoring. I think I heard somebody also talking about the single pane on convergence. Arun was mentioning on data and security. Just imagine if you had single pane for almost everything across your network. So these are the kind of technical innovations that are coming. But in my view, I think we do have challenges. There'll always be challenges. We've had challenges in BharatNet. Whether it is a great project, the answer is yes. The vision is phenomenal. There will be challenges, but we have to do multiple things in parallel. And I know we have less time, Yogesh, so I'll cut short presentation, but I'll leave you with this one line. And whenever I speak about challenges, I also talk about there is tremendous opportunities. I am an eternal optimist, and I always say one should look at the brighter side. Challenges will come. And I leave you with one of my favorite quotes, which goes like this, which is, 2 men behind the bars, one saw the dust, the other saw the stars. The choice is ours. We can always look at the negatives or we can look at the positives, right? And me being, as I said, the eternal optimist, and I would encourage all of you to have that level of optimism in whatever is happening around us. There is so much happening from a digital perspective in this country, which makes us proud. And believe me, in a lot of forums, a simple thing, maybe I'll just add one more simple example. The other day I was on a call with some global colleagues and they told me, oh, wow, look, in our country, we're so advanced. We had this fantastic QR code for vaccination and all. I said, so what? We've been doing the same thing. Look at how we've been doing all this. This entire vaccination process has been digitized. We've had our challenge, but there's so many countries where it is not like that. Even in US, people were making calls through, they were making endless calls to figure out where they could go for vaccination. It was very, very difficult, right? So a lot of positives. As I said, let's stay optimistic. And thank you so much once again for this opportunity. Yeah, and I look forward to listening to some of the next speakers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amit Malik. A wonderful
talk. More.
Yeah, a wonderful talk. Yes, he is right.
इसके बाद आप मुझे धक्का देके ना निकाल दें कि भाई बहुत टाइम हो गया.
मगर ये है कि हमने सब स्पीकर्स का ज्यादा सुनना है, तो शायद अभी नहीं तो और महीने 2 महीने में फिर से करना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि आधे व्यूज तो हम आपके ले नहीं पाए हैं सब लोगों के.
Absolutely, Sandeep ji, and Amit ji has rightly said that yes, in US, in Canada, people are really very much surprised, and I should say happily surprised. My brother who is in Toronto was asking, "Are आपके पास telephone में आ रहा है?" I said, "Yes, on the net itself, we are just got the code, and then we know at what time we have to be there at the vaccination center." And these Johnnies, they were making frequent calls in Toronto and then getting their appointment done. So what all is basically very important is, as Amit ji has said, that convergence. I will just add, sir, Amit ji, what you have said: convergence, collaboration, and connectivity. The 3 C's are very, very important in this business. This is what my little bit learning is, and the network which you have said is very important. One of my very senior friend who is a police officer who was saying, because of the network, we are catching the culprits, those who are doing heinous crimes. It is only because of the digital transformation. The net means जाल, वो जाल फेंकते हैं, अपने टेलीफोन से वो फंसते हैं. And he said it is so simple nowadays because the technology has really helping our people in police, in CBI, in IB, and everywhere. So I think digital transformation has really prevented the crimes also. So ladies and gentlemen, with this note, now it is my proud privilege to invite our own Professor N.K. Goyal from TEMA. and he will be speaking his remarks. And Goyal Saab, since our co-chairman, Mr. Mukherjee, is unwell, he is not there. So I will also request you to give the vote of thanks also. Over to you, Professor N.K. Goyal.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. I'm aware of the time pressures. I'm happy to see smiling Deepak ji, Arun Khanna ji, Ajit Pai ji, and Malik ji, all of you. And because whatever could have been said in favor of Digital India has been spoken. So I thought, what can I say now? Because I have to say something. So I'm going to be odd man out in the group. I have five things to raise. One is the connectivity. Half of the world is unconnected. Take the case of India, even though we have large figures, but when we come down to internet, smartphones, and availability in rural areas, the things are not so good. I just want to record a wording from 3-bench judge made on 3rd June by Justice Chandrachud. There exists a digital divide in India, particularly between rural and urban areas. The extent of advances made in improving digital literacy and digital access falls short of penetrating the majority of the population in the country. Serious issues of availability of bandwidth and connectivity poses further challenges. Now, USO is doing a wonderful job. Deepak ji is doing a wonderful job connecting through 4G and all various schemes also. But we still have lots of areas unconnected. My request always has been, why should we ally by the so-called latest technology of 4G, 5G? Even 5G is not now available fully, but we are talking of 6G and 7G. So my request usually is that please provide first connectivity by whatever means you have. We have 300 million customers now on 2G and 360 million don't have access to internet as per TRAI. So this is the one message I want to give. When it comes to Atmanirbhar Bharat in the connectivity part, we generally rely on BSNL and MTNL, which are 10% of the market share. How can we have Atmanirbhar Bharat in telecom with only 10% market share? We need to go beyond BSNL and MTNL. And also, we need to see that private operators follow PPP MII, which unluckily they do not follow even in the USOF projects. And Mr. Chandruka knows all these things. Now, I come to next part is affordability. Now, affordability, access, cost to access device, cost of internet, and the problem is that in one family, it is shared by so many people. Now, I will just leave it here. It needs much more to be said and spoken. It is not earlier days, even today, 2G phone is available at a cost of 500 rupees in Crore Bagh. But if you want to have a smartphone, not less than 10,000, 8,000 or so. My third part is coming about the latest, some examples of what is happening in the digital India, which is not so good. Take the case of vaccination drive. We depended heavily on internet and getting registered. Ultimately, we are forced to open up on the spot. Second, take the case of 12th class exam with all hype. We successfully failed to conduct exams and we have to go without exams. My third example I have is from my own experience as the advisor to Vice Chancellor of the University in Rajasthan. We had 150,000 students and we failed to conduct online because of connectivity is smart. So we have to go for physical. These are few examples. My fourth, very brief, is about economy. Everybody talks of COVID and is plus point. Very good, very good, very good. No doubt, no doubt, no doubt. But our GST in the PhD seminar on 11th of May said that 40 crore people were pushed down below poverty line during COVID days. Now, if it is so, how do we do for them? And GST also said in the meeting that affordability of access device is a problem. My fifth and last point was cyber security. Mr. Arun Karma spoke very well on this part, so nothing much to be said, but my only one small request. If I lose some money in the cyber, or if I suffer from a cyber fraud, where do I go? What should I do? Nobody answers this. So these, I think, are, according to me, 5 small things. And I was happy to know from Ajit Pai ji that he is willing to know how to move forward, what should be taken away, these things. My last message, not in the 5th, is we have been depending a lot on the private operators. They have done wonderful thing without any doubt, But we know the experience of past experience of private operator in the case of USO projects and rural projects. They had all the money, all the spectrum, all the licenses. Even then, they have not gone to villages. World over, it is not that they are depending on only private operators for rural areas. Let us think out of box. With this, I will stop here and look forward for other things. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Goyal. You have put a number of very relevant and practical issues which are there, during this digital transformation. And I am sure we are, and government and all the private players are certainly going to have more and more, thinking on this, how to solve such kind of issues. And ladies and gentlemen, let me also share it with you that we at PhD-CCI are always ensuring that such kind of meaningful platforms we always create so that people can ask more and more questions, and then the relevant questions can be answered. I could see in my chat box nobody has asked any questions. So I would go to Mr. Sandeep Agarwal, who is our mentor of the telecommunication committee. Sandeep ji, if you can kindly give your concluding remarks, and post that I will just give a formal vote of thanks. Over to you, Mr. Sandeep Agarwal, our mentor of the Telecom Committee. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. What should I say? The speakers have spoken so well on so many aspects. Some of the, Arun Karnaji was talking about the core technology. I was not even able to understand some parts of it. Yes. What we need to know is today is that what Goyal Saab has been telling us, that there are problems, and we know there are problems. We need solutions, and digital is the solution. And security, cyber security is most important. I can tell you why. In the last 1.5 years, I have lost more than 20 lakh rupees because of people, hacking into my mobile without my knowledge, taking the OTP, and I have not talked to them. How they have hacked, I don't know. But not only my mobile, various members of my family. So every few months, there is an attack and a few lakh rupees goes. So what we need to do is that there has to be some system where I can tell you one thing. In US, in UK, I used to have, whenever I used to pay, there was a small calculator they used to give us, my bank. And that code I had to feed in. And that code could not be hacked because that device was not on the net. I don't know how it worked, but it did. And so there was no chance of somebody hacking into my system and taking away the code, because that had to come immediately at that point of time. So is there a possibility, especially in the banking system, that that thing could be implemented some way that people do not get defrauded? That is what I think is the biggest challenge of transforming into the digital world, I would believe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sandeep Agarwal. Thank you very much for your remarks. And yes, you have rightly said that, yes, there are challenges, but of course there are opportunities. And we at this point in time will see that India is certainly going to take a forward leap as far as the digital transformation is concerned. And ladies and gentlemen, I personally, on my personal behalf and on behalf of PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and especially from Telecom Committee, I would like to give a warm, thanks to Mr. Ajit Pai, Distinguished Expert, Niti Aayog, Mr. Arun Karna, MD and CEO, AT&T Global Network Services India Private Limited, Mr. Deepak Chanduka, Deputy Director General, Special Projects, Department of Telecommunications, Government of India, Mr. Amit Malik, Managing Director, Asia Pacific, Japan and China, Cisco Systems India Private Limited, Professor N.K. Goyal ji for giving his valuable remarks and issues raised. And last but not the least, all the audience, those who have joined today. I am sure after all these 5-6 speakers, those who have said, that's why there were no questions. But yes, of course, if you have any questions, I have put my mail ID, and Kurtika has also given her mail ID. So you can also ask any questions. And we at PhD-CCI, as Sandeep ji and our President Sanjay Agarwal ji has said, we will ensure meaningful discussions, of course, through the form of webinar only, because COVID is on and we really need to make a social distance. And we would be certainly having such kind of webinars in future too. And post-COVID, we would love to have, as we used to do for the last 114 years, as a physical meeting, so that we learn more and we earn more also, so that more and more companies can come and do branding. That is also one of the concerns with number of Chamber of Commerce, that how to earn the sponsorship, how to survive ourselves. And there is a platform. When we have a meaningful platform and when we have discussions on from the industry, then the companies come forward and then they give the sponsorship so that we can also sustain ourselves, and especially the secretariat. So ladies and gentlemen, with this note, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your more than 1.5 hours. And we will ensure and assure you that such kind of meaningful programs, we will do it in future too. Wish you all the very best. Have a great day, whatever balance it is left out. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Kurtika ji. Thank you, Arun ji. Thank you,
Thank
Amit
you.
ji.
Thank you, sir.
Pratap. Thank you. Rajiv ji is busy.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the best.